Wonderful. Thank you. Maybe some more mic? No? Okay. Everybody in the back? Yeah? Good? Sound is good. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm very honored to be back. I actually celebrated my birthday here. We'll get back to that soon. But first, I'm here for you. I have a very personal story about me being a tester and growing in this field and the craft. And I hope to sort of instill and inspire you to also become a better test friend. Now, let's look at our goals for today. And I want to see some hands. Are your hands still rising? How many of you want less stress in your job? Oh, that's 2 hands. Good. Wonderful. And you're awake. This was the first test. Ooh, 2 hands and a leg. Ed wins. All right. Who of you want more friends? Okay. No? Schwau, you have too many friends? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Enough. Enough is enough. Who of you wants to become, enhance your career? You're at a great conference with great talks. I imagine everybody's raising their hands. Yes, wonderful. All right. Do you also want to help the career of your friends? Oh, very friendly people. We're in Canada, right? That's good. All right. And lastly, maybe you also want to grow your career and become a leader, formal or informal. Okay, there's some ambition in the room. That's good. Well, me too. That's also what brought me here. That's brought me all my recent roles as a QA leader, but I've not always been a QA leader. More on that later. I'm Martijn Goossens, and I updated this slide to show that I'm 40 years old. That's the party act. Anyway. Now, the sad thing is that half of that time I've been in QA. The good thing is I like doing QA. I've also been in Agile, I do e-commerce and all kinds of stuff, and I work for a company called Sirius. So if I forgot to remove the logo, that's my company. I want to tell you and kickstart this story by telling you a story about the editor and the critic. In a writer's process of creating prosa or books, they typically have a friend. And that friend is either a critic, very negative, and gives feedback very harshly. Nobody really likes critics. Now, good book writers have editors. They're friends. They are partners in a creative endeavor. And together, the editor, he still has feedback and will give feedback to the person writing something, the owner of said prose, but it's more of a collaboration. I think that's a more friendly way to go. Now, early in my career, I was also more of a critic. I was a young tester, manual, and I was just new in software development. So when I found a bug, I was very proud that I found a bug. But addressing this to a developer, I didn't make many friends yet because they thought I was attacking their work, their person, and their involvement into this creative process. Oh boy! Now, soon I, of course, am that friendly person that's on stage today. Some of you have met me, and I found out that being the editor is a better way to go, and it will enhance what we're doing together. Being that partner in the creative endeavor. So, my first takeaway is, friends, don't use Jira to communicate. All right. I see some thumbs up, but post-pandemic and hybrid working, there is some benefits in using Jira. However, I think still bringing feedback to a person is the best way to go to actually make sure that we're doing things together instead of breaking down a relationship, right? So I've already sort of let it shine through. I was a tester once. I'm a QA leader now, and there's been many things in between. And what I want to instill to you is wherever you are in your career, I think we can learn from the people around us. Not only the QA people in this room, but also the people in your work. And that's what this talk is about. Because I think that made me a better professional. And hopefully this will inspire you to also find friends in your company. So what does that company look like? You might actually work in a software company, right? A company that produces software, because any company uses software nowadays, right? And any company that produces software has a few roles. You might also work in Agile. I did a workshop yesterday and everybody raised their hands that they were working in an Agile environment. Is there anybody who's not working in an Agile environment? A few. Wonderful. So whether it's an Agile environment or more waterfall, I think you have a few distinct roles. Somebody who writes code, somebody from the business, somebody who cares about what pretty things look like, and somebody who does the operations, support, maintenance. Yes, I'm that old, because that's a role that I don't see anymore. Now, the goal for this organization and your team is putting something to production, right? Ideally. Now, imagine. You are the QA expert of that team. All on board? You might recognize this role, right? Oh, I was one click behind. Sorry. Anyway, in that role, I think there's a lot of burden on us. This is a nice developer team picture. Guess who's behind the camera? Right? Because in our role, it's our job to find all the bugs, or not to get yelled at. So, you know, how do we do that? Because we're just one, maybe two persons in a full Agile team. There's too many people chucking commits at us. It's not necessarily the most fun feeling if that's the way your team works. Now, I like road trips. I drove all the way down here from Toronto, which is a long way if you're living in the Netherlands. It's a short way if you're living in the US. Anyway, detours. Get ready for one. Because as a tester, I typically want to bring value, and I look at three different aspects. My friend Joao brought three different aspects. I have my own set. So I think quality is about building the right thing, building the thing right, and bringing proof about what the things are that we did. Now, what they look like in a typical QA's role are that we look at if the thing does what it needs to do, if we look at all the things that it shouldn't do if it doesn't do that, and also we look at non-functional requirements, ideally. Accessibility, performance, security, all kinds of stuff, and types of testing that we bring quality to the product. We make sure that the thing is built right. Now, lastly, when we are done with our job, and we've done everything that we could for a new iteration, we want to bring proof. We want to show what we tested by test results and a list of known issues that, you know, hopefully somebody's going to pick. So if we have all those ingredients, then I think QA is approved. Stickers are available. But why do we bring this to our work day to day? Why is this our role? I think that in software delivery, there is a need for a goalkeeper. And typically, that's somebody with a QA in their name, or testing, or, you know, it's typically not a developer that goes like, I tested all the acceptance criteria, and here, can you also find some bugs? So I think in that software delivery process, we all need to work together. In any types of sport, if it's soccer or ice hockey, there's always one person in that goal. But it's the whole team that tries to prevent a counter goal. So it's only as good as the weakest link in the team. And I hope that's not just us. And that's sort of what this talk is about. Because ideally, I think we need to talk about a holistic quality mindset. That everybody knows what we're doing, why we're doing it. And my workshop yesterday was all about bringing quality to shift left. But the journey goes through all those roles that I talked about earlier. So I also think we need to share the burden of quality. When quality is shared, we share the burden as well as the success. Because I think that we as QA can also high-five people when we did a new release, right? It's not all about breaking stuff and finding bugs. Because if we focus on everybody having that mindset of quality, I think we also liberate ourselves from being a tester, being stuck in that test column, and I think that also breaks free our role, making our role more interesting, more impactful, more visible to the team. And I think that also helps us become more of a QA ambassador than just a QA engineer. Now, to become and change our role, we need to make some friends. Not just colleagues, but actual friends in the software delivery. So, it's super important that we know who our friends are. Are you all that old? Okay, good. Me too. So remember that software company, that hypothetical software company that we all worked at? We need to find some friends. And you could become friends with the CFO, but this is not a talk about how to increase your goal score, right? So the friends that I typically look for are the product owner or someone from the business, someone who writes code, a developer perhaps, someone from UX who makes the pixels pretty, and somebody who deploys things to production. Now, these are the likely friends that I hope that you all will recognize in your organization. You might already think of someone who's very close to you in your development team, right? So let's explore how we can broaden that friendship, how we can shake hands and help each other do our work more efficiently and better, right? That's what this talk is about. Now, let's dive head first in where all our problems start. I mean, great ideas, right? This is where all the input comes from, and that's our business owners, our product owners, people from with a business background. They've got great ideas, but in their role, they have a few responsibilities. And I think that they need to bring the business translation to technology. Typically, they're the input to a development team, and they know what the business wants, and now they are talking to us, the techies, to introduce this to the working software. Also, Scrum dictates that they are the owner and most responsible person to put on the backlog priority. So they have the business priority. They know what needs to happen now and what can happen later. They can make decisions about this. In their expertise, they have the business knowledge, but also the Rolodex of everybody who ever shot in a request via email saying, hey, can we also add this to our software? So having the phone number is super helpful for us as testers so we can understand what we need to do. But as I mentioned, friendship goes both ways. It's a quid pro quo. So I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Now, there are some wordy slides coming up. But good news, I did some vibe coding today, and the slides will be available through a QR code on my website. So don't be afraid of the words. But this is all the fun things that I think QA can help POs with, and POs help QA with. Again, don't look at the slide. Because I want to tell you a personal story of a friendship that I made with Marika. Marika and I worked for an eBay kind of company in the Netherlands, and she was a new PO. They were building a new website. I was, I think, 8 years into QA, so I was helping her understand what Agile was, but also how to build in quality from the get-go. So with our Supreme Scrum Agile team, I was the liaison and worked closely together with her so she understood better how to input her wishes, desires, and hopes and dreams, and how we can sort of improve that and build it into the company. So that friendship was really nice, and I actually shot her a message about this lovely picture. She was very enthusiastic and also dreamed back about the times that we worked together like 12 years ago. And she's a very successful PO now, maybe even because our friendship. If we look at those QA ingredients that we took a detour on, I think that POs and people from the business care most about building the thing right, or building the right thing for our end user, our internal users, and to achieve business goals. But they also are very adamant on getting proof. Hey, I asked this of the team, is that also what's now built? So working on proof and building the right thing, that's where the POs and quality assurance come together. So the artifacts that together we make, in that case, so for example, Marika didn't know how to write user stories, so I came up with a format, a template that we used for all our user stories. It included acceptance criteria, use cases, a design, all of that kind of stuff that I wanted to know about when I finally got to do my thing. Test automation wasn't really a thing back then. But also, we helped the team do the demos, because I tested the software and I had a running test environment that was, working okay. I could do and prepare the demos for her. So that's how that friendship sort of worked two ways. I thought that was pretty cool. On to our next friend. User experience, because working software is only good if all the pixels are aligned. No, wait, that's designers. Designers are never our friend. That's a topic for a different conference. But user experience are actually my biggest friends. My friend Blake, he had a great topic about personas. And that's also having the user in mind. So in their role, UX makes sure that users actually use the software. But they also provide user insights, and they can walk through wireframes, mock software to actually help you gain insights about how the software will be used and helps you test early. Their expertise is in usability patterns, anti-patterns, and that kind of stuff, which I think is super interesting. And getting user feedback, either live from the customer, but also going into a store, for example. So again, there's a lot of ways that we can work together. Those mockups. A very wordy slide, but as promised, there's a QR code, so I'm not going to bother you with this one. I'm going to talk to you about my friend Reinout. Reinout and I worked for an e-commerce store, and when we were testing, he was making the wireframes that we could already sort of walk through. And ultimately, we actually went to the stores to show these wireframes in the store to get early feedback from the users. This learned me early in my career how users interact with working software instead of me just envisioning and making assumptions. And he also looked at things more technically because I brought that technical viewpoint. So Reinhard and I think, had a very friendly work relationship, but outside of work, we also grabbed a beer often. Now, that quality then also returns back to our QA ingredients. I think UX is a lot about building the right thing. Is this the right thing for the end user? But they also care about if this thing is built right, with the right patterns, the right flows, and that kind of stuff. I think that's super interesting, but not top of mind for a developer. So having this information is super interesting to building quality early in the process. So the QA artifacts that we build together are user-validated flows. We're looking at usability and design artifacts that we can use. For example, you can also use those artifacts in visual testing using, for example, Applitools Eyes, if you integrate that in your test automation. Then, our friends who turn ones and zeros into workable code. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Developers, in their role, they basically turn ideas into machine executable code, which is super interesting. And they keep the technical architecture in mind, making sure that quality also means maintainability, for example. And lastly, they make technical trade-offs about doing a quick, dirty fix, or maybe something sustainable that won't bind them in the ass on a weekend. Their expertise is one or multiple full-stack technology languages and coding best practices. I think that's very useful. Lastly, they also test on the unit level, which of course is the best way to, not test manually. Our friendship goes both ways, and there's a lot of stuff that we can do together. Blah, 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 a lot of words. But the story I want to tell you is about my friend Chris. Chris and I worked at the oldest retail store, online commerce, at the Bijenkorf in the Netherlands. We were building a whole new website. It was super exciting. We had 3 Scrum teams, but no test automation. I was hired as a test automation engineer, but we had no framework. Now, somebody was building a protractor framework, which was super cool, and we eventually implemented, but we needed some help. And I was only the second tester in the team that was only growing, expanding, and working on new software, so we needed it now. Luckily, my friend Chris understood quality, and he was way faster in coding than me. So Chris and I, we sort of tackled the problem. We built up the framework. He was a pro in JavaScript. He still is. And that's also how we sort of embedded quality and test automation in that project when it really mattered. So our friendship worked both ways because he understood that this would help him do his job, but also help our team. So I think becoming friends with your developers is super important. What that then delivers in the QA ingredients is making sure that the thing is built right, architecturally, maintainable, and that kind of stuff. That's, I think, the main driver for developers. They want to do cool stuff. But they also want proof of this stuff. They're very tactile people who want to see that things work, right? Ultimately, they also care about that is the right thing, but they're not a business-driven sort of occupation, so less so. And the things that we do together to make sure that we increase the quality is increased and improved code coverage. And if we talk about testing on the right levels with our developers, we also don't repeat ourselves in the other test layers, as well as in creating release notes and understanding what we actually changed, which helps in testing, but also in the proof of what we delivered. So the last friend that we can sort of find in our organization, and there is one more, a secret one. But first, operations, or support, or deployers, or whatever you might call them. In a lot of organizations, this is still a separate role, but your team might be DevOps, so this problem might, be already in your team. But I think having this expertise as a separate entity is very valuable because there's a ton of stuff that we can do together if the capacity is there. So in the role of operations, it's their sort of responsibility to make sure that deployments happen and that they happen properly and fast and, So they care about the operations of production, and if production is down, they're probably also the first one to get a call. So they're the first responders for production issues. And their expertise lies in pipeline processes and operating systems, depending on your systems. And lastly, resilience, because being called upon the weekend is not their favorite thing. So quality, again, goes both ways, and there's a ton of stuff that you can do together. Read about that on the slides. But first, I want to tell you a story about Kevin. He's a dear friend of mine, and he told me all about resilience testing and failover plans. Because, again, Kevin was responsible for production, and every time it failed, he didn't necessarily look at me, but he understood that we had a symbiosis. If I tested correctly and talked about quality in my team, then everybody was sort of working together that he wouldn't be called out of bed in the weekends or at night. So we came up with failover testing, test plans, and we actually executed that. So we made sure that our team understood what needed to happen if something actually failed. It was super interesting, and I think that more companies should do this, but there's other things that we can do together. Looking at QA ingredients, the ops people care most that the thing is built right. Because if it's not built right, they are the first responders and need to be picking things up and putting out the fires. So they also want proof that everything was tested, everything is okay. Change acceptance boards are super fun. So QA artifacts that we produce together, I think, are performance insights for how our production environment is actually doing. And we create a rollback plan for when shit hits the fan. Pardon my French. Lastly, dashboarding is super important, but also integral to operations. They are staring at CPUs and users and that kind of stuff all day. So if you are in need for dashboarding or inspiration on dashboarding, they're typically a good friend to talk to. So let's circle back to that road trip we took early. That QA motivation about building the right thing, building the thing right, and all the proof that we want to produce. Because I think with the friendships that we made along the line, we sort of have better functional requirements. We now also have better user stories, and we have designs and design artifacts that we can reuse to upgrade our testing, but also create a better understanding about shifting left and introducing quality early. When we look at building the thing right, we suddenly have a lot of friends that help us. For example, with user-validated flows, that we're doing the thing for the right reasons, that we have increased code coverage, but also that we have a plan for when stuff fails. And lastly, to prove that we did a great job, the internal requirements, the proof. Now we have a product demo to show the people to be proud of what we did, but also take them along for the ride about what they can expect. The release notes that the developers wrote will help everybody understand what part of the code is written and changed, so we can also do risk-based analysis. And lastly, the dashboard is super cool and can just show everybody what the status is of our website, but also our processes and pipelines. So I think QA approved. Now, these friends are not hypothetical, and in your organization, you can probably think of a few that you can talk to tomorrow or next week. But the friends that I talked about today are friends from a, somewhat distant past. Some of them I still talk to regularly. But they exist, and you should find your friends as well. This is not my story. It should become your story to find your QA friends. And this was just only the tip of the spear, because there's a ton of cool stuff that we can do together as well. Some inspiration like testability matrix, key user flows, vulnerability reports, resilience testing, logging and traceability, helping us find defects and getting to the root cause analysis, A/B testing, front-end performance testing, and for example, observability and shift right. There's so much more to do with friends along the way. And with those help of those friends and a holistic quality mindset, I think we need to check in on those goals. Because with these friends, I think we should experience less stress in our job. I also think we will have made more friends along the way, now, but also maybe 10 years in your career. I think you will become a better tester and enhance your career by becoming a better tester and more informed, but also skilled in the wider range of a development team. It might help the career of your friends. Seeing the light of quality, is a ray of light that we should shine upon everybody. And, this could also make you become more of a leader, or at least more impactful in your organization, and bring people along for the ride of quality, because, that makes everybody more happy. That makes me super happy. So, as promised, there's a big QR code coming up. This is the time that you can pick up your phones, because this is the time that you can be the tester and test out my vibe-coded quality code. There's also a link to the targeting quality feedback form that I hope that you fill in for me, but also all the other great talks that you had today. I had a blast, so I hope you did too. And with that, these are my contact details and the office that I work for, and if you ever need to find me, these are my socials. Thank you so much. Yeah, questions are very welcome.
Does anybody have questions that they want to ask?
Don't be scared. I'm your friend.
We got a hidden one behind the pillar over here.
Ooh, hey, buddy.
What's your best way to approach others in the org to make said friendships?
Yeah, that's a great question, because if you just come in with only your goals and your objectives, it's never going to be their story, right? So it's always about thinking already a bit along the way of what are their goals. That's also why I put on these slides what the angle is that these people are coming from, so you can sort of identify your own goals with those goals and see how you can connect. Another way is to just pick up one of these activities and say, hey, I want to do more of this. Can we work on that? So some options.
Anyone else? Trying to see around pillars. Yell out loud if I can't see you.
Yes, Clara.
Okay, you said not to report through Jira or to submit a ticket. Is that actually something that you actually do, or it's just a joke? Or have you reported defect by messaging the developer and saying, okay, I'm spotting this, and how do you track the metrics if your team does that? It's something that is picking me since I saw that.
Yeah, sure. So if I understand you correctly, your question is about, hey, communication should maybe not happen in Jira, but how do I then track all the bugs that I find? I'm not saying not to use Jira. I'm a big fan of Jira and all the things that it can do. But I do think that it's not the main communication point. It's super interesting to just be behind your laptop and shoot everything into Jira that you find. But if that's your work relationship with somebody and somebody else's inbox is flooding with like bugs that you found in their code, that's probably not going to be very friendly. So it's all about how to approach people before you give them feedback. And it could still be Jira, but don't surprise them with a bunch of tickets in Jira. Yeah?
Just wondering, I mean, I guess maybe not with these physical friends, but hypothetically, have you had cases where, you're friends with one person and then the other person, but then they're not friends amongst themselves and you're trying to play mediator? Or similarly, what happens when both friends needs conflict?
Yeah, I definitely had that. I'm trying to sort of recollect when that was the most strongest, but I do recognize that as a tester, I typically feel and find myself sort of befriended in all areas, but not necessarily everybody else is friends with each other, right? And I think it sort of comes back to the early question about how to approach people and bring them along the line so they can understand each other. So communicate about everybody's goals makes suddenly the overlap visible, because typically people have implicit goals and don't sort of show the back of their minds and tongues, and then suddenly there's a lot of assumptions and that are fighting. While we're all creating that software, we're all responsible for it. So that holistic quality mindset is also about that sort of North Star where we're all working towards. If we keep that in the back of our mind, then quality suddenly becomes a vehicle instead of a goal.
Well, related to the don't talk through Jira all the time, but you still have to track whatever it is you talked about offline. Otherwise, someone's going to find the same thing that two people decided wasn't a big deal and have the same conversation about why it's not a big deal. And that gets annoying.
Very valid point. Is there a question behind that? Because I do want to.
I mean, how do you deal with that? It's like, do you
Yeah.
always, capture the whole of what you discussed
Yeah.
and put it in the Jira?
Yes, because typically I do keep a list, and I, as much as I do like Jira, I typically don't like filling in forms, which Jira is also, right? So I typically have my own list that I then, talk to the developers or the development team. With that input, those findings also become better. So suddenly logging that issue also has a technical aspect, or maybe I involved somebody from UX because it's a designer issue. So before I do the administration, that's super important. We first do the communication and enhance what we're going to fill in. Make sense? Yeah. Cool. Ari.
So just to follow up on sorry. Just to follow up on the communication part.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it's the okay. Sorry. It's about bedside manners and knowing who you're communicating with. One of the things that you definitely don't want to do is, especially when we're working remotely so much, and we have all these wonderful tools that we can communicate with in group chats or individually. It's never a good idea to call out the developer or somebody else saying, oh, you broke this or you made a mistake here, right? So it's about communicating with the person first. Perhaps you're the one who didn't understand it. So clarify the situation. Of course, keep track of the notes and everything else. and then proceed on creating the necessary information that goes into a Jira ticket, for instance, then that gets processed as well. I mean, long time ago, when we didn't really have QA as much as developers, we used to, had friends, and we were, we would joke with each other. If we found each other's bug, we'd go up to them and say, "Hey, buddy, learn to program." But you would never say that to somebody that you don't know that well.
Yeah.
So it's knowing who also your audience is. That's something to keep in mind.
All very valid points, so take that into mind.
Any other questions out there?
Going once. Going twice.
He'll also be at social if you don't want to ask in front of a very large room.
I'm around.
In a microphone. All right. Well, we want to thank you for coming and being our keynote today.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, there is a couple of other things I want to say. On top of our regular thank yous this morning, I want to give extra thank yous to Martijn, Tina, Rob, and Joao, who all stepped in to cover talks in the last 48 hours when we had to make some last minute changes to our schedule. Without them, it wouldn't have been the same, so we just want to give kind of an extra shout out to them for stepping into those roles and doing that. And Eric, who has done that in the past, but this year we did give him 5 days notice, at least, that he was also being focused on the track. Quick reminder for everybody about some logistics now as we wrap up the day. The social will be starting upstairs in about 30 minutes. In the meantime, there are cue cards on your tables if you want to have a conversation amongst the people that you're sitting with right now. They're all around QA, some AI, just to, get some networking started before we get upstairs. When you do get upstairs, please remember to swing by the registration desk to return your badges. We do like being able to reuse just the lanyards and the plastic in the future. That way we have less waste. And by turning in your little name badge, you will be entered into the draw to win one of the 2 2026 KWS QA memberships. Not only does that get you the Talkster of the Year, it also gets you a discount on Targeting Quality 2026, which hopefully we'll announce something about soon as we nail down dates for that as well.
And the drink tickets.
And the drink tickets are also there when you return your name badge. Otherwise, you will not get your 2 drink tickets. So, very important topics. We want to make sure we cover those as well.
Way to bury the lead.
Yes, well, try to be responsible out here.
Mhm.
But thank you all again for coming out today. Truly, we couldn't do this conference without everybody, and we're very thankful that you're here.